Welcome to the I Do Wedding Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Nina Adio, a social media marketing expert specializing in the wedding industry. Each week, we'll explore the strategies, stories, and insider tips that help wedding professionals thrive. You'll hear solo episodes filled with actual advice for social media and inspiring conversations with esteemed wedding industry guests. Thank you for tuning in and letting this podcast be a part of your day. Let's get started. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the I Do Wedding Marketing Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about something that we don't talk about a lot on the show. And before I get into it, you may know if you're looking at the title what we're going to be talking about and who with. But first I want to read something to you. More leads that give you a little thrill when you open their inquiry. More time back in your week. More revenue. More visibility. Whatever goals you're looking to hit in your wedding business, I can make them happen with website copy that's sophisticated, strategic, and still a pleasure to read. Now that I read from our guest today, Andrea Shah of Andrea Shah Copywriting's website. And just with her words and her copy, suddenly we were feeling, right? We were feeling the thrill of opening an inquiry, the relief of more time back in our week. And just with her opening paragraph on her website, she made us understand why copy is so important for our wedding business. Now, as a social media manager, I love when clients have good copy because that means the work is already done and we have so much to work around and pull from. When you have good copy for your website, that's going to transcend to everywhere else you're putting out material, because I like to consider the website is where it all lives, and that's where we get inspiration from everything else we're doing. So I'm really excited to talk to Andrea today. Andrea Shah is a wedding industry copywriter for creatives and educators who want the words on their website to stick with their dream clients long after they've closed the lid of their laptop for the day. I'm really excited because I keep saying that I'm really excited. That's not good copy. But what I mean is that, there are certain people in the business where their names kind of go alongside with it, right? If somebody brings up website SEO, you might say Sarah Dunn. And when copywriting comes up, Andrea Shah comes up. So being able to talk to her today makes me really excited for all of you, because we're going to learn why copy is so important and how we can apply it to our business to make changes, to get bookings, and to stand out. So let's take it to the interview. Andrea, thank you so much for being here. Where are you coming from today?
So I'm in South Florida, just a little north of Miami. So I am enjoying a sunny 80-degree day. And I know it's April, so I probably shouldn't rub it in because you're further up north.
Yes. If you're watching on video, you can see there's beautiful sunshine surrounding Andrea right now. I love it.
Yeah, that's right now. And then probably around 1 in the afternoon, it'll be a little bit of a different story because it likes to rain here, but we'll take it as it comes.
Yes. So it's a good thing we got an early time slot. So this way.
I literally have had to postpone podcasts before because it was thundering and raining too much. And I was like, I can't hear. So yes, it's good.
So, this is the first time I ever opened up a podcast episode by reading somebody's website other than their about page, right? I've read about pages to give a bio, but your homepage drilled in what you do so well, it evoked emotion, right? And you're just talking about copy. You're just
words on a page.
So one look at your website and reading copy on a website felt fun. It felt like something I needed, right? So I want to know what brought you into copywriting and specifically within the wedding industry space.
So, like any good copywriter, I did not start out as a copywriter. When I finished school, I thought that the only option, like I saw jobs advertised for it, and I thought it was all Mad Men, and you had to work on Madison Avenue and wear a power suit. No, like, not for me. So I worked in a company that was tech, but we did a lot of websites. And so I learned a lot about websites, about sales funnels, about SEO, about brand voice. We worked with some amazing brands. And then I had a kid and didn't want to go do the 9 to 5 anymore. So I started my own business, like the most boring story in the world. And I started out doing some translation, but eventually pivoted to copywriting. And I honestly just kind of fell into the wedding industry space. I got one client and it snowballed from there. She's an elopement photographer. We still work together. She's incredible. And I was just like, oh, I really like working with creative people. It's much more fulfilling to me than working with software companies or any of that. I just love working with like creative entrepreneurs who are wedding. There's so much artistry in the wedding industry and so much focus on client experience. And I love bringing that out in people's copy.
Do you have a set system of how you bring out that fun or personality to a wedding brand?
I try to ask fun questions in my questionnaire and questions that like I try business is serious, but I try to get you not to take yourself too seriously. And I'm always pleasantly surprised it works. Like people loosen up a little bit and they'll give me honest answers. And I'll ask you questions like, what is your toxic trait? Or
Mm.
what are the things that irrationally annoy you? Because yeah, we don't need to know that, but it gives me a little bit of a deeper sense of who you are and what annoys you. And I can just take that and pull it in as I'm writing your copy. And I also listen and read a lot. You know, I'll talk to all my clients and get a sense of their personality. And then I read a lot of what they've written. And most people are more fun than they give themselves credit for. And also, most people can show that fun and that personality in their brand and it works for them. Obviously, every brand is a little bit different, and some brands take a little bit more of a detached like perspective, especially as you move into the luxury space. But in general, when I talk to someone, I can get a sense of their personality and start to bring that in. And I think it's also a personality match thing, right? I get a lot of people who want to show personality because that's my style. I don't write for all my clients like I do for myself, but they're people in general who want to bring a little bit more of themselves to work.
So in we've been talking a little, maybe about 11 minutes total now before starting to recording. Have you picked up anything on my personality as somebody who watches,
Definitely, I feel
personalities?
like you're no nonsense. Like I feel like you've got kind of a straightforward, like what also as someone who spent a fair enough time around like New York City, I was like, you said you were from Long Island. It totally
Mhm.
tracks. Like I just get this like sense of where you're from. And I also feel like where someone is from is really fun to bring into their brand too, because a lot of us are really influenced by like our sense of place. And so that's something that I end up bringing into a lot of my clients' brands, not just where they're from, but also like where they live now, where they've lived in the past. Like I'm writing right now for a photographer who is English, has spent a lot of time in Sweden, and now lives in the States. And so we're pulling all three into her brand to make it, you know, show off these different facets of her.
That's really fun. I always joke as a New Yorker, like they're gonna find out. Like as soon as I say coffee, it's done.
Yeah,
Like
that's
like they're gonna.
100%. Or you refer to like the city or you talk about waiting online or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So now some people listening, they may be a salon or a venue, and it's harder to pick up on what that brand personality is. How can they do that?
My number one tip is to read your reviews or talk to your past clients because they will usually tell you what your brand's personality is. They'll tell you how they felt when working with you. And from there, you can kind of reverse engineer to figure out what that brand personality is. Anytime I work with a client, I sit down to read their reviews. And obviously, people will tell me a little bit of how they want their clients to feel, but it goes both ways, right? You also want to know how you're making your clients feel, and that will reveal a lot about what your brand personality is. If you are a business like a salon or a venue, you can have really fun, punchy coffee and a very personable brand voice. I mean, there's some brands who sell really quote unquote boring products out there who have amazing, fun brand voices. But that also doesn't have to be you. You can be a little bit more removed if that's more what works for your brand.
What about if a client or, a wedding industry brand, maybe they're new or they're unsure of who their ideal client avatar is. They're going to be discovering that as they start.
So I think you want to, every time you get a client, sit down and ask yourself what you liked working with them about, or what you liked about their wedding in particular, because it's not just about the client, it's also about the kind of wedding they're having. You could have the most awesome client, but if they're having the kind of weddings you don't want to work in the future, you need to let that shape you. But you kind of do a debrief every time you get a client and think about what you liked about working with them, what you didn't like about working with them, and start to narrow down that way and be prepared for it to change. I tell anyone, it's normal to do your copy yourself in the first couple of years of your business. And that's great because you might start your wedding business thinking you know exactly who you want to work with. And 6 weddings in, you're like, well, pump the brakes. I want to be doing something totally different. I thought that I wanted to work luxury, and actually I want to work more outdoorsy weddings. Or on the flip side, like I thought I was good with tiny weddings, but actually I love directing big bridal parties. And if you're a photographer out there who loves directing big bridal parties, I can probably find you some clients, because most of my clients are the opposite.
How important is it, or is there an order to it? Should a company have their branding logo done before the copy? Do you like when the copy comes before, because maybe you can influence that, or is there no rhyme or reason to it?
So branding, it's usually when I work with a designer, we'll work simultaneously so that I'm doing the copy while they do the branding. We'll bounce back and forth ideas and that sort of thing. But on the flip side, what I really love is doing the copy before the web design whenever we can, because that will influence the web design. That'll influence the shape that the copy takes on the page itself. And it'll make for a little bit more fluidity in how the designer creates the website. So like when Emily Foster and I work together, Emily, that's what we usually do is she'll be working on the brand strategy and actual logo while I'm doing the research and the copy. And then she'll come in, and any designer I work with is always free to come back to me and be like, hey, I had this wild idea. And I'm like, great, let's run with it. Or I'll tell them, what if we did, a map on this section and made it interactive? And most of the designers I work with love kind of collaborating like that. Sometimes my ideas might be a little too wild, but we try to make it work.
So speaking of that and collaborating with web designers, are there certain sections of a wedding vendor's website where they should particularly be focusing on injecting personality into the copy?
Yeah, I would say your homepage in particular. Obviously, we need that homepage copy to be really personable, to feel really like you. We also want to see any mini bios you have somewhere. So if you have a mini bio on your press page, although those tend to be a little bit more formal sometimes, but a mini bio on your press page, a mini bio on like your blog when you have your blog and people come click on it, you've got your little sidebar. But I'm going to say your about page is like number one. The about page is the main place where you want to show your personality. And that can come through even if you're a brand that's bigger than one person. I was just writing about this for a template that I'm working on. Sometimes if we could got, say, one planner who founded a company, now she's got 6 planners underneath her, we can still have her personality as the founder show through a little bit too by adding a note on the website, that's from her, written in the first person, and just has that extra little personal touch.
I think your website is a great live example of this. For example, on your about page, you had the mini bio and then the 2 different versions we could look at. Do you have any examples of what could be kind of like an enticing piece of copy on a wedding vendor's homepage? And I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I want to know when I'm looking at a wedding vendor's homepage, especially, you're going to put a bio on your about page. It's usually going to be 2, or your homepage. It's usually going to be 2 or 3 sentences to get people to click through to your about page. I want you to add one fun thing about yourself to that. It doesn't, and something creative. Please don't tell me that you love coffee. Everyone except me loves coffee. If you read my about page, you will find out that I don't like coffee. So could you tell us you
don't love coffee, and would that count?
Yes. Yeah, that does, because it's more memorable. I have literally had people ask me about it and say, like, you don't drink coffee? And I'm like, yep, definitely not. But something interesting about yourself, and try to make it be something that your ideal client can relate to. So this is kind of a cliche, but dogs work a lot of the time. If your ideal clients are dog people, and you can weave in a fun fact about, you like to go hiking with your golden retriever Max on the weekends or whatever. Dogs really work. Cats work for cat people. whether your clients are dog people or cat people is something you have to kind of know as you get into working with them. But there's lots of other things. For me, it would be like travel is a big one because most of my ideal clients are big travelers, and that's immediately a point of connection for us. So you're going to want to add a little bit of personality in there. But the other thing I would tell you is if you are a personal brand, as opposed to a brand that has a number of people working under you, if you're a personal brand, you do want to write the way you talk a little bit. There's, it's not going to be as casual as you are in the group chat, but there's also a tendency to make yourself sound stiff and formal because you're thinking, I'm professional. This is a business. And especially if you're like me, you come from corporate, you tend to lean into like very bland language, and you have to unlearn that a little bit and have a little fun. It's okay to use a little slang. It's okay to overuse italics a bit. It's okay to use emoji. Those are fun things. And that's how you're going to show up in your emails. That's how you're going to show up when they chat with you.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I wanted to ask is I know there's somebody listening, and if you're this person, let me know, because I always give the example. I know someone's listening thinking of this, but they're thinking they don't want to show personality because they're afraid they may isolate or exclude potential clients. So can you speak on that?
Yeah, I think you are going to exclude a couple potential clients, and that's okay because unless you live in a small town with 25 people, you can't book everyone. And if people don't like your personality, are they really who you want to work with? That said, like there's obviously a line. There's some boundaries, that you may, the person you are after 2 glasses of wine is not necessarily the person you need to be on your website, but the person you show up as to a Zoom call to meet a potential client or to sit down with them to plan their wedding or at a walkthrough does need to be the person that you are on your website. And usually most people are afraid of this and they end up finding out that showing their personality books them more clients and clients that are better aligned with them. Ultimately, it's not that common for someone to show personality and then have people like, oh, I don't want to work with them. No, that's usually not the way it works.
One example I like to give is here on Long Island, I have a friend who is a planner, and she kind of fell into a lot of the weddings kind of out east in the Hamptons area here. And what was happening was because she wasn't showing her personality, she was actually missing like the zebra print weddings, or the quinceañeras, or the stuff that was more her, right?
Mhm.
So it was like, well, then you got to show it. Like from a social media perspective, it's like, all right, we got to show the animal print. We got to show that, what your style is, because that's what she found out she was missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see in the Hamptons, like there's a very kind of oceany and clean aesthetic. And like, if you are into zebra print, there is someone out there getting married in the Hamptons who wants someone who's going to do bold, playful, colorful design, but they need that person to show that they're capable of doing that.
Yeah, yeah. And kind of like, it's almost like, when you're making a wish list for a partner, right? It's kind of like the same thing that you do for your client, and then let that show. So
Mhm.
as someone who does social media for clients, I'm always looking at their copy, because to me, that's where I like to consider, that's where everything else about your brand copy wise is born, right? Through your
Mhm.
website, and what you have on your website, that's like the top of the inspiration funnel that I'm pulling from. And a lot of wedding pros right now on social media or with copy in general maybe sounding cliche, especially with AI, because we're using AI and we're getting your love story begins, or, a lot of the similar terms. So how can you help, or how do you help clients find their true voice that stands out but still converts?
It's a lot of listening. I think it's a lot of listening. So to talk about AI, my clients do occasionally use AI. They'll use it for blog outlines, they'll use it for Instagram captions, but by the time they come to me, they're usually interested in going beyond that on their website. And we all have to create so much content that I don't begrudge anyone their use of tools to create it. Like, 15 years ago, you were not a one-woman content mill if you were a wedding planner, but now you kind of are. Same with a photographer, a venue. Um, so I do think that there's a tendency, we have to remember that AI is trained on like certain sites, and it's only getting trained now more on content that's been written by AI. So it's going to continue to spit out kind of some of the same language. and some of the same things. I also find that even if you're using AI, it can be a little too verbose sometimes and you need to trim. But most of all, whether you're using AI or writing yourself, this is going to be a tip people hate, but I'm going to give it anyways. Read what you're writing aloud, cringe a little bit if it doesn't sound like you, and then think about how you would actually say that if you were talking to someone, if you were at a networking event or a wedding show or just meeting someone out and they said, okay, so tell me more about your hair and makeup business. How would you actually explain what you do out loud as opposed to this writing version of you that we sometimes slip into?
That's great advice. It reminds me, a lot of what I learned in social media was being able to be present I was with a wedding venue and I was present at the sales meetings. And that's what helped me to learn a lot about both what the couples are wanting and what the sales team objections they were dealing with and how they were selling and so forth. So if you take what you just said, taking your sales pitches kind of and incorporating that's such a great tip. As
Yeah.
speaking, oh yeah, continue.
Oh yeah, no, I was going to say just also like after you have a discovery call, if there's questions they ask, if there's objections they raise, jot those down and think about how they need to be woven into your copy, not just on your website, although of course that's useful, but also in your social content. I'm sure you can agree.
Absolutely, I do, because just like with copy, social media can be part of your sales team, right? Not
Yeah.
proactively, but passively. And so when you start addressing those objections in there, and it's not direct, it's not saying like, hate our carpet. Well, here's why we like it, but
Oh my God, I kind of actually, okay, but this is the thing. I would love to write for a venue that would be willing to like pull off that bold voice because it could be really fun and you'll stand out like, hey, carpet, this is why we love it too. Carpet is, don't get me started on carpet. That's a whole different podcast episode.
yeah, that's what would come up in the sales meetings all the times. But if somebody's listening and they're willing to do that, let us know.
Please call me. I will work with your brand. We will have so much fun.
Yeah, we will share your post. We will make this explode, this campaign.
We'll have you going viral on TikTok because you're like, hate our carpet? We get it. But
how can we balance SEO and personality with our copy?
so I think that SEO, I don't want to say it plays a minimal role, but nowadays we've moved past keyword stuffing. You're not trying to cram it in there. So as long as you use your keywords in a few, if you'll pardon the pun, key places, it's really about user intent these days. So if you're using your keywords in the few places where they matter and the reader is getting out of your page what they came for, you're going to do fine with SEO. Obviously, there are tweaks you can make, and obviously it does depend on what keywords you target. But in general, I kind of think of it as like there's a few utilitarian pieces of the page. My H1s are never exciting because they need to have that keyword in there. And I cannot say, Long Island gluten-free cake baker. That's kind of longer than I would recommend, but in a sentence, like it's not the way you want to introduce yourself by saying, I'm a Long Island gluten-free cake baker. So we just kind of tuck it in a little line of copy and move on. I do think what's really interesting, and I don't have all the answers on this front, we're all discovering it, is what happens with those AI overviews and where AI is pulling content from on your website. And I think if you know Sarah does SEO, Sarah Dunn, she's also exploring that a lot more. But I think that it's still valuable to have content on your website because we may eventually move past straight up SEO, but they're still going to pull content from your page to give these AI overviews. Google does it, ChatGPT does it. And I think the keywords people search for aren't going to change. Although I don't know, because I see the way I have a 9-year-old and I see the way she searches with like the spoken natural language search. And I'm like, maybe these kids are going to change everything. They expect to just ask a question and have the exact answer delivered to them. So we'll see how it changes.
Funniest thing is like when, the kids I see my nieces and nephews when they're, toddlers and I can't understand what song they're asking for. But Alexa does. And I was like, I have no idea how Alexa got Red from Descendants out of that, but they did. And
someone's done a lot of work on Alexa's and understanding that like toddlers are, some of the main users of Alexa. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. My daughter and her friends are doing a research project and they were like struggling a little bit with search because it doesn't work the way they think they should. So, a skill issue that we have to work on. But it's like they want to be able to just press the Siri button, ask a question, and have it immediately spit out an answer. And I think that's going to become more common. And so we still have to have good content. We're still figuring out how AI is pulling that content to give people answers. I wish I had an awesome answer, but
yeah, well, I will say Sarah Dunn, it either will already be posted or posting soon, is on the podcast talking about AI and SEO.
oh, great. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to
so
tune
this will
into
be
that too. Yeah.
perfect. But as you were speaking, I pulled up your website because I feel like you are the perfect example of everything you teach. And you have the H1 website copywriting for wedding pros, but what's really great is that your web design made it so nothing looks boring.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to call that out so people can take a look at andreashah.com and just see great examples of everything you're teaching today.
And my web designer is Emily Foster.
Yes, Emily Foster Creative has been on.
So I want to give Emily the credit for also kind of seeing my vision with that and running with it. And that's how I recommend designing for a lot of my clients too, is doing what we call it, the technical term is eyebrow copy, because it goes over your main headline like a little eyebrow. And that's a great place to put the SEO keywords so that they are there, they are present. I think one common myth, and I'm getting a little technical here, is we all think that the H1 has to be the biggest text on the page, and it does not. So that's always a really useful tip that I keep in mind when I'm writing.
Oh, that's great. So once again, that was Emily Foster Creative, she mentioned. So when you check out Andrea's site, I'm from Long Island, so we have the New York Mets who are blue and orange, and the Islanders are blue and orange. So I love
I didn't know both the Mets and the Islanders. I knew about the Mets, but I didn't know. Yeah. So, I always think I'm in Florida, so I think the Florida Gators.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, so it's Mets and Islanders. So it works out if you like both those teams, like my husband does. So everything he owns is blue and orange. What's one quick copywriting tip a wedding pro could implement this week to sound more like themselves and connect better with their dream couples?
So I'm going to split this into two because I think sound more like yourself. I can give one tip, which is just go back and read some of the ways you talk to someone you're comfortable with. It could be a client you've known for a little bit. It could be a colleague that you work with regularly, creative partner, and find some language, casual language that you use and start pulling that into your copy. And again, it doesn't have to be your absolute most casual self, but go back and read your homepage and see if you can slip in an opportunity, a phrase that you use regularly. We all have phrases that we use regularly. And the other thing, I don't want to see you using phrases you would never be caught dead using in real life on your website, because you don't show up as yourself that way. So think about the things you're saying all the time, find the ones that are most professionally appropriate and weave them into your copy. As far as connecting better with your dream couples, I think one of the easiest mistakes to make when we start copywriting for ourselves, if you're doing it for yourself, is we assume they need to know about you and your business, which is the correct assumption. But we use a lot of I or we when we should be using you. And so if you can go and read a paragraph of your copy and find a couple places where you talk about I, and think about how you can change that to focus on them. So instead of saying, I create immersive wedding experiences through the power of sound. I am really just spitballing here. You want to say you're looking for a wedding experience that uses sound to captivate your guests or whatever. And just think about those things, the little ways that you can flip it to focus on them, because ultimately we're all very selfish and we all want to know what's in it for me. I feel like you could boil every talk I give, every podcast interview I give, down to the principle of the people reading your website or the people listening to you want to know what's in it for them. So tell them what's in it for them.
And once again, your opening page on your website is such a great example of that. I'm going to keep plugging it because I love it so much. Before we get to our bonus round, what things do you have on the horizon right now for wedding pros and their copy, and how can people work with you and find you online?
So I am going to be opening up a little bit later this spring, some offers to help people. Of course, I do one-to-one from scratch copywriting, but I'm also going to be offering some messaging audits for people who are not sure yet if they want to do a full overhaul of their copy, but they want someone, kind of a third party, to come into their business, look at things with fresh eyes and be like, here's what we could be doing differently to position you. So I'll have that. And I'm also going to open up some strategy sessions for people who want to bring any marketing or copy questions. Just an hour with me, put it on the table. We'll work through it together. You can come find me for any of that. You can come find me at andreashah.com, or I'm Andrea Shah Copy on both Instagram and Threads.
Great. And so now I have my bonus round, which is questions I'm asking everybody, regardless of topic. And the first one is, what is your morning routine?
Chaos. As I've mentioned, I have an elementary school child, so my morning routine is like staying in bed as long as I can, then getting out of bed to make lunch. But when it actually comes to sitting down to work, I usually do three things. I try to do 5 minutes of stretching, 5 minutes of just like a little bit of meditation, and then 5 minutes of journaling and just kind of organizing my thoughts for the day on pen and paper, because that really helps me get sorted out. I find myself shifting to pen and paper a lot in the past like few months to try and just plan things out, map things out, because I don't know, it just opens up a like different, this is going to sound weird, but different pathways in my brain than typing does. And I think it kind of just gives me the freedom to think a little differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm a big journal advocate, so I love that.
Yeah.
How do you continue your own education, whether it's your personal education or business education?
I try to get out of my house. I feel like this is the most beneficial thing for me. Of course, I listen to online workshops and courses, but I love attending conferences and just being in the room with other people. There's a different energy. I just went to a Be Sage conference in Mexico last month, and it was so incredible. Just talk to other people, because that's also really important, is for me to just get out in the world and be talking to the clients I want to work with, the people who are involved in the weddings industry every day, actually producing weddings on one level or another. There's some moving part of it. So I need to talk to those people, but I also just love going to a good conference and learning from people. And you can learn so much, even if the topic of a session isn't necessarily geared towards you. There's just a lot you can learn about how different people run their businesses. So that's the number one thing for me. And then I always try to have something new on the go that's not business. So right now I'm learning to embroider, which is really fun. And it also pairs really well with stuff like listening to podcasts, or I'm really bad at sitting down and listening to content that I have like on audio if I don't have something else to do. So it's really good for me, like embroidery, I can work with my hands and at the same time, listen to content that I've purchased that's like about, I don't know, how to sell your offer on Threads, or how to use Thrivecart, or whatever it is. So that's the other thing, is like, I like to have something new going. It's good to be bad at something. It's just healthy for you, I think.
Yeah, and this is why I love asking those two questions, because you learn things, just through asking them. You learn about, the idea of pairing, right? Pairing the task you're doing with your hands with listening to things. And so I really love that tip. So when I do paint by number, so I'll have to pair it with with a
Oh,
good
that's fun. That's fun. Yeah, I also do some coloring. I thought adult coloring books were really uncool for a while, and then I
yeah.
became more of an adult, and now I really like them. So,
I feel the same.
yeah, and there's other things too. Also, it's good to do when cleaning. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Not as exciting, but cleaning has to be done, and it's a little bit more enjoyable sometimes with a podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This was a lot of fun, and we got a lot of tangible takeaways, and you really made copy important and fun and something that I'm interested in. So thank you so much, Andrea.
Well, thank you for having me. This was great.
Yeah, looking forward to hopefully having you on again. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.